listening to A Scary State, and this week we're talking about Maine. So, Lauren.
Yes, Kenzie.
Let's get scary.
Question.
Answer.
What's your favorite Gatorade flavor?
I don't really.
If you had to choose a Gatorade, what would be your favorite flavor?
Maybe one of the blue ones?
Ah, yes, light blue is my favorite. I was just thinking because I'm drinking the clear one, and it's cherry, and it's actually pretty
I
tasty.
don't like anything cherry.
My bad experiences with cherry tastes.
Yeah, it tastes like fucking Robitussin, the worst tasting medicine on the face of this earth.
This one thankfully doesn't.
That's good. I'll let you. You know what I thought about the other day?
Huh.
Remember how we said for the intro we were going to change it up a little bit and say the state nickname?
Yeah.
Cool.
Should we start now?
Yeah, hold on.
But people already know from which one it is, but we'll pretend we didn't say that. Is it the Nutmeg State?
Nope, the Pine Tree State.
Oh, the Pine Tree State. So today we're talking about the Pine Tree State.
Yeah.
So, Kenzie?
Yes, Lauren?
I guess that makes a lot of sense with how many pine trees are in Maine.
They probably have quite a few.
They do have quite a few.
Probably a Maine staple there.
But all right, you said a Maine staple?
Oh. I did, didn't I?
I thought you did that on purpose.
No, just naturally that funny.
Oh my gosh, so good for you. All right, so should I just jump into our state facts?
Yes.
On the evening of September 17th, 1898, Sarah Ware, a well-respected woman in Bucksport, Maine, vanished without a trace. When she failed to show up for work, concerned locals launched a search, but it wasn't until weeks later that her decapitated body was found in a field, her skull shattered by a blunt object. Wow. Suspicion quickly fell on William Trewergy, a local man whose barn contained a hammer with what some claimed was blood on it. Despite the circumstantial evidence, no one was ever convicted, and the case remains unsolved. Over a century later, Ware's mother still haunts the town with haunts.
No, did you say murder?
After Ware's murder.
Sounded like you said mother.
I said mother.
I was like, you definitely said mother.
I did, and the reason is when I was trying to find something to talk about for Maine, I did find a murder of a girl that happened, and her mother still goes around trying to bring awareness to the case. So I think in my brain,
Sure.
So over a century later, Ware's murder still haunts the town, with many claiming to have seen ghostly lights or heard eerie whispers near the site where she was discovered. In October 1947, one of the worst wildfire disasters in U.S. history swept across Maine, consuming over 200,000 acres and displacing thousands of residents. That fall had been abnormally dry, and when the fires ignited, they raged uncontrollably. The town of Bar Harbor suffered the greatest devastation, with entire estates, many belonging to wealthy families like the Rockefellers and Vanderbilts, reduced to ashes.
I'm sure they were okay.
They were probably fine. They could go to one of their 17 other homes.
Exactly.
In some areas, the flames moved so fast that people had no choice but to run into the ocean to escape. By the time the fires were extinguished, 16 people had died and entire communities had been wiped out. The disaster led to sweeping changes in Maine's forest management and fire safety laws, leaving behind a charred reminder of nature's fury.
Charred reminder.
What did I say?
No, you did, but...
Oh.
Charred reminder?
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. You didn't go but for that one.
That one's a little too dark to but for.
Okay, that's true.
The old Lincoln County Jail, built in 1809 in Wiscasset, Maine,
probably,
was notorious for its brutal conditions and public executions. Inmates were often crammed into damp, freezing cells, suffering from disease and malnutrition before their trials even began. Among the most infamous hangings was Joseph Sager, convicted of murder in 1822 and executed before a gathered crowd. Public executions were common at the time, drawing spectators who viewed them as a form of grim entertainment. Many who died within the jail's stone walls were said to have met gruesome fates, and their restless spirits are rumored to haunt the old buildings to this day, with reports of ghostly whispers and the sounds of phantom chains rattling. I mean, with the grim entertainment thing...
We can't talk.
We can't.
No.
And anyone listening can't talk either,
Correct.
So... On June 25th, 1970, Thomas Bird became...
1790.
1790, Thomas Bird became the first person executed under U.S. federal law. A British sailor working on a merchant vessel near Portland, Bird was accused of murdering their captain, John Connor, and was quickly brought to trial under the newly established United States federal court system. His conviction and sentencing set a historical legal precedent, as his execution marked the first time a federal crime was punished by hanging. A large crowd gathered to witness his death, underscoring the era's public fascination with executions. His case remains an important footnote in early American history, signifying the growing power of the new government's legal system.
We were a baby. We were only like less than 20 years old.
Who was?
The United States.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, we weren't alive.
Correct. Well, we maybe were.
Oh, maybe.
Some version of us could have been there.
That is very true.
Mm-hmm.
On November 26, 1898, the passenger steamboat Portland left Boston bound for Maine, carrying 190 passengers and crew. Unfortunately, the ship sailed straight into the Portland gale, one of the most violent storms in New England's history, with hurricane-force winds and massive waves. Unable to withstand the storm's fury, the ship capsized and sank, leaving no survivors. I don't know. I didn't end the sentence how I felt it should have ended.
Leaving no survivors.
For weeks, wreckage and bodies washed ashore, but the exact location of the wreck remained a mystery for nearly a century until it was discovered in 1989. The disaster remains one of Maine's worst maritime tragedies, and to this day, some claim to see ghostly visions of this ship drifting through the fog of the New England coast.
Go ship, go ship.
You know, I love my ghost ships. Originally named the Maine School for the Feeble-Minded, the Pownell State School opened in 1908 as a facility for those with developmental disabilities. However, instead of providing care, it became notorious for inhumane conditions, neglect, and forced sterilizations. Many of those committed were not actually disabled, but were orphaned, troubled youth, or individuals simply deemed undesirable by society. Former residents later revealed shocking stories of abuse, experimental treatments, and overcrowding. The school remained operational until the 1970s, when public outcry and changing the laws led to its closure. Today, the abandoned facility serves as a chilling reminder of Maine's dark history of medical mistreatment and institutional abuse. That sounds like the West Willowbrook place. Willowbrook? Is that what it was? Whatever the place I talked about for New York was.
I was also thinking about the school that your mom talked about in the first North Carolina episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of them have that, like...
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. United States history has a lot of stories of using marginalized people for medical experiments.
Yep. So while the infamous Salem witch trials of 1692 are well known, Maine had its own period of witchcraft hysteria. In the 1680s, several women in the Kennebunk area were accused of witchcraft, with townspeople blaming them for bad harvests, illness, and strange occurrences. One of the most notable figures linked to Maine's witch trials was George Burroughs, a minister from Wells, Maine, who was later accused of being a leader of witches and was hanged during the Salem trials.
Interesting.
Unlike Salem, most of the accused in Maine were spared execution, but the paranoia and fear caused irreparable damage to the accused and their families. Today, the remnants of Maine's own witch trials are buried deep in its colonial past. That is interesting. I've heard of George Burroughs before, though. I feel like I have, at least.
I don't know.
In the early 19th century, Bowdoin College's medical program had a major problem. Oh, God, not enough cadavers for its anatomy classes. Instead of relying on legal donations, some students and professors turned to grave robbing, exhuming freshly buried bodies from local cemeteries under the cover of night. The practice went largely unnoticed until outraged townspeople discovered their loved ones' graves had been disturbed. The scandal sparked public outrage and violent protests, forcing Maine to enact laws regulating the use of bodies for medical research. The dark chapter in the school's history highlights the desperate and unethical measures early medical institutions sometimes took in the name of science. We've talked about the grave robbers in a couple of our episodes.
Oh, yeah.
For nearly 3 decades, Christopher Knight, better known as the North Pond Hermit, lived in the Maine wilderness without human contact. I think Nora covered this one in our first Maine episode.
He sounded familiar.
Yeah. In 1986, at the age of 20, he walked into the woods and never returned. To survive, Knight burglarized nearby summer camps and cabins, committing over 1,000 break-ins to steal food, clothes, and camping supplies. His ability to remain undetected for so long became legendary, with locals exchanging stories about the mysterious figure who left behind no footprints or clues. He was finally caught in 2013 while stealing from a camp in Rome, Maine. His arrest brought an end to one of the most bizarre and fascinating cases of isolation in modern history. Some view him as a survivalist genius, while others see him as a disturbed recluse who preyed on others for sustenance.
Both and?
I was listening to Mr. Ballin, one of his episodes, of course.
Which one?
I think it was the Stranger Than Fiction. one of those ones.
Okay.
And I think they talked about him. Or there was another guy who also was
They
caught.
talked about the one with the bus.
Yeah, no, it wasn't this guy. It was a
Oh.
different one. Someone who was stealing, and he would like go steal from these summer camps and like people's cabins who he knew weren't there during like the winter months or whatever. And he would do it under like when it was a cloudy, stormy night. So people are always afraid of cloudy, stormy nights because this creature that they didn't know was stealing stuff. He was caught, and then he had to like, he wasn't allowed to go camping. Like that was his like punishment for getting caught after all of his burglaries. And then he just like moved into his own little like 1-bedroom apartment and just lived life.
There you go.
But he liked being in the woods because he was like, it's my own place. Like, I don't need anyone. He hadn't talked to anyone for like years.
That's crazy.
I know.
That can't be right for the mind.
I wouldn't think so.
So
that's why there's that show called Alone that my brother and I love. And it's people who go out into the wilderness and their goal is to out-survive everyone else there. And you're just by yourself for however many days. And the kicker is you don't know how long everyone's doing it for. You don't have like a set limit for how long you're doing it. So it's not like, oh, in 100 days I'm going home. It's just however long. You just have to outlast everyone else. So the game ends when like, say you and I are the last two.
It's like the Hunger Games without killing people.
Kind of. But yeah, like we wouldn't know we're the last two. We don't know how many people are still there. But the moment you're done, I then am told that I'm the winner. So it could go on for 5 days. It could go on for hundreds. Okay, probably not hundreds, but it could go on for a really long time.
2 problems. 1, I don't like the outside.
You would not do well.
Let alone having to be outside by myself.
And you have to catch your own food. You have to build your own shelter.
I can barely just set up a tent.
You can't. No. You did not do the necessary precautions to set up your tent.
I probably wouldn't even be able to bring bug spray.
Oh, what?
Bug
you
spray.
said bug spray.
Bug spray.
Yeah, you wouldn't. Oh, you might. I don't know. You have like a backpack of some survival tools.
Because I bought that tent spray. I used half a bottle on my own tent. I said, no creatures are getting inside of here.
And then we used a little bit, and it clearly didn't protect us when that freaking spider crawled out of the corner of our tent.
Clearly half a bottle is what's needed.
Ugh.
And I spared none.
Oh my God, last night Joe and I were in bed, and we're just like laying down, just like hanging out. And he starts to freak out, and he jumps out of bed. He felt...
What kind of deep breath was...
Because he felt something crawl on his arm, and he looked, and it was a spider. So he flicked it off of his arm. It fell on the ground. He freaks out. I freak out. Don't know why we're freaking out, but we're freaking out. He tells me we had to shake out every single sheet, every single everything. We still can't find it.
Oh, that's nice.
So when we got back into bed after shaking everything out, I was like, so you did, it's on the floor, right? And he goes, yeah, it's not in the bed anymore. And I said, have you found it on the floor? And he goes, no. So we don't know where the spider is.
And you keep inviting me over.
It would be like a journey of 1,000 miles for the spider to get from that room into here. Oh my God, I was driving yesterday and a spider came up, like, you know where like your speedometer and all that stuff is? It came up right on there, and I just went, ah! And I had like a napkin, and thankfully I went, meh, and I killed it. Oh my God, I was so scared. And there was a car behind me, and there was a car waiting to turn, and I'm just like freaking out in the middle of the road.
So safe.
So safe. But I made it and I didn't crash.
That's good. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. If it had been any bigger.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. If it had been any bigger, I would have died.
Yeah, that happened to me once. There was a spider on my windshield, and it was small. And so I just like grabbed a napkin and whatever. And I thought about just how like instantly I did it, didn't freak out. And I was like, if that had been any bigger than the size of the pin that it was,
right,
you would have crashed this car.
Ooh, that happened to me when I was getting into the car in my parking garage. I knew there was a spider in my car. I just couldn't figure out where it was because I kept seeing like wet. Like, I know. So I opened my car one day and it came out of like the vent, and I just went, ah! And then this guy who was working at the parking garage, he goes, are you okay? And I was like, there's a spider and I just killed it and I'm so scared. And I was like, but thank you, I'm okay.
I would have screamed and slammed the door shut.
I had to get it because if I didn't get it then I
would have made that registration to it.
Well, I'd already killed it by that point. It was like one of those things where you're screaming and killing it at the same time.
I do that. Actually, typically what I do when I am going to muster up the courage to kill a larger size bug is I get an obscene amount of toilet paper. So enough so that I don't feel anything crunch.
Ooh,
And I stare at it for a really long time. And I say, okay, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. I get everything out of the way. Toilet lid is up. No obstacles. And like, in Double Dutch, when they're doing the jump rope and you're like doing the whole back and forth thing, getting ready to have your moment to like jump in.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
I'm psyching myself up. I'm like, you got it. You're just going to grab it, run, toilet, flush. Grab it, run, toilet, flush. The moment I start to go, it's wait, all the way to the toilet.
Very accurate, yes.
Yep. Yeah. So if it falls,
game over.
Then I will scream.
Oh my God. When we lived in our old house in Alexandria, there was a spider up on our ceiling, and our ceilings were like cool ceilings.
Yes, they were.
And so Joe had a ball, and he kept trying to throw it to hit the spider. It took like a good 15 minutes, but we finally got it.
I'm surprised it didn't like move.
Yeah, no. Maybe it was too afraid.
Or maybe it was like, these motherfuckers had terrible aim. I'm
probably
fine.
that one over everything.
I am fine.
Oh God, I hate them. That's why I hate summer.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. There was a bug somewhere. I don't think it was inside.
So it was outside.
Possibly.
Where they're allowed to be.
Yeah, but I was like, ugh, this is why I hate when it gets warm out. The only reason I hate when it gets warm out.
Oh yeah, that's one of the many reasons I hate when it gets warm out.
I'm just like, give me the warmth. Make the bugs part of winter. Winter already fucking sucks to begin with.
No.
Yeah.
Well, if they did come out during winter, though, you're mostly covered during winter, so they wouldn't bite you.
I'm not worried about necessarily being bitten. I'm deeply disgusted by bugs. And when I'm deeply disgusted by something, my fear is that it's going to touch me and get its ickiness onto me.
Yeah.
That's my issue with bugs. I'm not afraid like, oh, it's going to hurt. I mean, if it's a big one, sure. But in the general sense, it's just, oh my God, what if it touches me?
What about butterflies?
Well, it's different.
They can like land on your finger and you'd be fine?
I mean, I'm going to wash my hands afterwards.
Well, obviously, I would hope so.
Yeah, but no, that's okay. Because they're not disgusting.
That's true.
They're pretty. But when I was in charge of growing ladybugs.
Oh, yeah.
When they were pre-ladybug. No, thank you.
You don't do that anymore, do you?
No. They obviously we teach science, but they don't have like the units for like second grade we did butterflies. That freaked me out because I somehow had to make sure that the chrysalis thingies were hung up, and I was like, I'm going to kill all these butterflies. I didn't. My second fear was when we released them, that as the butterfly was flying up into the air, a bird was going to come in and eat it.
Did that happen with any of them?
No, thank God.
Oh my God. And that's what you teach the children, the very valuable lesson of death.
So that was the second fear. But in third grade, we grew ladybugs.
Mm-hmm.
And we named them
Lady George?
Lady George. Yes. So it was actually kind of the most wholesome thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh.
We all crowded around and released them. And I was like, don't touch them because they're tiny and you're going to smush them.
And ooh, they're bugs.
Yeah, but it was a ladybug. So like that was okay too.
Those are fine.
Yeah. Ladybugs and butterflies. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's Maine.
They probably got a lot of bugs.
Well, they're the pine tree state.
And
a lot of trees, a lot of bugs.
A lot of trees, a lot of bugs.
Ooh, a lot of spiders.
Stop.
Okay.
What's spooky tea upon, Lauren?
Alrighty, so I went into some urban legends in Maine. None of them were long urban legends, so you get 3 today.
Ooh.
So we're starting off with a well. And I know how much you like wells.
I'm sure it's going to be well done.
And don't worry, I give you a full beginning, middle, and you get the conclusion for this well.
Thank God.
Okay.
You learned your lesson from last time.
I did.
So
and I
good.
never stopped hearing about it, so I got everything this time.
And you never will.
So this is the Sabattis Well incident.
The who?
Sabattis.
Sabattis?
Or Sabattis. It's a town.
Huh.
So the town of Sabattis has a population of only 5,034.
Damn.
It also happens to be home to 10 cemeteries.
Wow.
I know. The legend of the Sabattis Well story goes that one day, back in the 90s, while out in the woods, 3 teenage boys stumbled upon an old, uncovered well. But this well wasn't a secret. All of the kids in Sabattis knew about it. The rumors said that it was haunted, filled with ghosts, waiting to be explored.
Who explores wells?
Well, my next sentence says, well, boys are dumb.
Yeah.
And being boys, they decided to dare one of them to be lowered down into the well by the other two. And of course, one of the boys accepted. But it wasn't so much that he was dared, he was very eager to be one to go down into the well and finally see what was in there. So nearby, the boys found some rope in a small tire. They tied the rope around the tire, and the one boy sat on the tire. The other two then lowered him deep down into the well.
Innovative.
I know. So far, in fact, that they lost sight of him down in the deep well. They kept lowering him until the line went loose, indicating they had reached the bottom. Then they pulled it back up.
Is that what that indicates?
That is what it indicates.
Because to me, that indicates that the tire fell off the rope and the child plummeted to their death.
Nope, it meant that they reached the bottom.
Okay.
So when they felt it, they pulled him back up. But the boy on the tire wasn't the same one who had gone down.
What?
Well, it was, but he had changed.
Oh.
He now looked old and haggard with pale skin and a lined face.
What?
His face had aged 50 years, no
What?
longer looking like the 10-year-old boy he was before, and his hair had turned completely white.
That sounds like some fucking like Doctor Who episode.
Yeah. And his normally bright blue eyes were now a dull black. They were no longer sweet, but rather wild, frightened, and haunted. When they finally pulled him up and out of the well, the boy started laughing maniacally.
Ew.
And when the two boys tried to ask him questions about what had happened down there, he spoke in gibberish. It was clear the boy had lost his mind while in the well. His condition, whatever it was incurable. He had to be sent away to a county mental institution to live out his days as a psych patient, having no ability to tell anyone of what he witnessed and experienced down at the bottom of the well.
But he's like an old man, right?
He looks like an old man now, yeah.
So it's like to him, years passed.
Mm-hmm.
Even though for them it was a few minutes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeesh.
The well does actually exist. It is fairly close to the edge of the Old Combe Cemetery on a little side road called Mitchell Street. But please don't trespass, as the well itself is on private property. But there is a man named Marc Laflamme, writer of the Sun Journal. He had wrote an article where he told the whole legend. Then he broke the news. He had made the whole thing up for an AOL writing contest.
That's lame as fuck.
Yes. AOL. So while the well does exist, the story about a boy turned mad after going in does not. But it is still a fun legend that children in Sabattis like to pass around.
Supposedly.
Supposedly it's a story they like to pass?
No, that they made up.
Supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to know.
Mm-mm.
But Mark says he did make it up, so he does know.
I don't know.
So
What
yeah,
if
that's
he's lying about the lie.
What if he was one of the boys who lowered the other boy in?
And then the other boy who also survived, when he saw it, he was like, what the fuck, bro? Why did you put our story on blast? No one's supposed to know. And so then he came back and was like, just kidding, I made it up.
I like our theory much more.
Same.
So then we have the curse of Jonathan Buck.
Okie-dokie.
This is urban legend number 2.
Rule number 2. You
Count 'em.
can't bring people back from the dead.
I'm not letting you go further.
That's all I know anyway.
Oh, good. It's not like Mulan.
Nope.
All right, so apparently this is a somewhat well-known tale, but I haven't heard of it. So friends from Maine, is this well-known? So it all started in Woburn, Massachusetts. Yes, I know we're in Massachusetts, but we'll get to Maine.
Okay.
On February 20th,
Close to each
1719.
other.
They are, yeah. This is when a man named Jonathan Buck was born. He then grew up in Haverhill, Massachusetts. It looks like Haverhill,
Mhm.
but it's Haverhill. I
Okay.
asked a Massachusettsian.
Yes.
Eventually, he married a woman named Lydia, and the two had 9 children, though tragically only 6 lived to adulthood. John had a shipbuilding business, but business wasn't good and he wasn't able to get it off the ground due to property issues in Haverhill. So in July of 1762, he and a team sailed up the Penobscot River to survey 6 new plantations. That following year, he settled in what was designated Plantation Number 1, which is just south of modern-day Bangor, Maine. So fun fact, at this time, Maine was not yet a state. It was still part of Massachusetts. It became a state in 1820.
There you go.
And our story is happening in 1762.
So Maine does not exist.
Correct. But for the purposes of our show, it is Maine.
Sounds good.
So he found a good spot, and there he built a sawmill and a general store, and his family settled in nicely. In 1776, very big year for the U.S.,
Huge.
Buck was named colonel in Maine's 5th Militia during the Revolutionary War. Apparently, even though Maine had a bigger army, the British won the battle here. Buck's loss was known as the most humiliating and terrible loss in U.S. naval history at the time.
Damn.
I know. Apparently, apparently they held that title until Pearl Harbor.
Damn.
I know.
That's fucked.
I know.
That's fucked up.
The article I read, I was like, ugh. So one of the main reasons they lost was because the men under Buck kept trying to one-up each other and couldn't stop arguing over who was in charge.
Yeah, and see, I don't know how it can equate it to Pearl Harbor because that was completely different.
Yeah. I don't know.
That was a blindsided attack.
I know.
Some thoughts about that one source that you used.
So the rest of the Americans at this whole battle part decided to bail, Buck being one of them. He fled with his wife and youngest daughter to Brewer, Maine. From there, he and his family walked over 200 miles back to Massachusetts, where they planned to wait until the shitstorm in Maine settled down a bit. Though another part of this says that a Royal Navy burned his plantation, reducing his village to nothing more than a pile of ashes, which is then what caused him to have to go back to Massachusetts, and that he actually had been quite the leader in the war. So we either have that he ran away, or that he was a leader and was forced to leave after his plantation was burned down.
Okay.
Right, so he's either a great person or a really bad person.
Okay.
So they ended up staying here in Massachusetts until the war ended in 1783. At this point, he returned back to Maine. Plantation 1 was eventually resettled and renamed Buckstown Plantation. On March 8th, 1795, he died and was buried with his family in the Buck Family Cemetery. In 1817, the town was renamed Bucksport to pay homage to the owner and for the growing interest in shipping in the town. Then in August 1852, a monument was erected in the cemetery.
1852?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A monument was erected in the cemetery for Buck as his great-grandchildren felt he needed more recognition as being the town's founder.
Even though there's a possibility he ran away.
Which is why I don't think he did. Which is why I think it's more the story that his plantation burned down and he had to go back.
Yeah.
Because why else would you be like, he founded this town, but you wouldn't want your town to be founded on someone who abandoned you during the war.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's why I think he was a good dude.
Okay.
So the obelisk sits 15 feet from Buck's grave in the corner of the cemetery. So Buck, as well as many of his family members, are buried in the cemetery, which is enclosed behind a wrought iron fence. And like I said, this one is about a curse. And the curse that surrounds the Buck family is memorialized by a plaque at the front of the monument that depicts the so-called curse.
Oh.
The curse, of course, has many different versions, but the most common one goes like this. So at one point, Buck worked as a justice of the peace, and while working as such, he sentenced a woman accused of witchcraft to death by burning.
I wonder if he was part of the witchcraft thingies that we talked about earlier.
I don't think so, and I'll go into why in a bit. So this woman was sentenced, and as she was tied to the stake burning, she shouted over the flames a curse on Buck's tomb. Her curse went, quote, "Jonathan Buck, listen to these words, the last my tongue will utter. It is the spirit of the only true and living God which bides me speak to you. You will soon die. Over your grave they will erect a stone, that all may know where your bones are crumbling into dust. But listen, upon that stone the imprint of my foot will appear, and for all time, long after you and your accused race have perished from this earth, will the people from far and wide know that you murdered a woman. Remember well, Jonathan Buck. Remember well."
Oh.
But then we have another version, of course, that goes that this mystery woman, still accused of witchcraft, but it was after having Buck's child. She was pregnant again with another of his children.
That's bucked up, Buck.
You, Kenzie. So her being pregnant with his child is what caused him to accuse her of being a witch. Because men.
And burn her alive? Yeah, let's put up a statue for him. Sounds great.
For this accusation, he tied her to the front door of her house and set her on fire. Her son, one that she shared with Buck, not the one in her stomach, an older one, then took the smoldering leg of his mother and used it to club Buck.
Good for
him.
Thanks.
What?
Did you not say good for him too?
No, I said crippling him.
Okay. Never mind.
Yet another version says that as the woman was burning, her leg rolled out and landed at Buck's feet. Some say that she declared she would dance upon his grave. And in yet another, it says that Buck actually impregnated a young Indian woman to hide his infidelity. And it said Indian. I don't know if it's Native American or Indian, but the article said Indian, so I'm not sure if we're being politically correct or not. So, anywho, to hide his infidelity, he burned the young woman and her unborn child alive. As her corpse burned, one of her legs rolled out from the fire in accusation. The woman's mother, who was a shaman, cursed Buck for killing her daughter.
All fair.
So all of these kind of encompass this curse.
Okay.
So it is now said that on the monument, there is a stain in the shape of a lower leg and a foot, which is now believed to be the witch's or potentially the young woman's, and the foot showed up 50 years after the monument was erected. But no matter how many times the monument is scrubbed, the foot keeps reappearing. The monument has been replaced, but the foot persists. It is also said that there is a stain in the shape of a sideways heart a bit higher up on the monument, maybe signifying that Buck did have a secret affair going on with this witch. But the article I read also said that maybe it means that Buck had a love of women's feet.
The first documented foot fetish.
I know!
A secret he thought he could take to the grave.
Oh, look at you, Mackenzie.
I am on a freaking roll.
I love that. Someone who visited said that whenever they tried to take a picture of the tombstone, not the monument, but the tombstone itself, their camera battery would die, the settings would act funny, always something to make it impossible to get a decent photo. So, is this the truth, or what are we going with here?
Another AOL makeup story.
There isn't any historical evidence to support these claims.
Well, that's unfortunate.
The witch trials took place in Massachusetts and those in Connecticut, so subsequently Maine. Those took place years after Buck was born. Years before Buck was born, and there were apparently no records of anyone being executed for witchcraft in Maine. Also, as the justice of the peace, Buck would have no right to sentence anyone to death.
Okay, so I was wondering about that because I was like, wait a minute, justice of the peace. Isn't that like someone who marries people?
Something like that.
I was like...
But yeah, as that job, you don't have... So he was actually justice of the peace, but you can't sentence people to death in that position.
Maybe he didn't sentence them to death, but the whole affair shit. And they were pregnant, and he still set them on fire.
That could very well be. And the appearance of the leg has been explained by experts as being a natural flaw in the stone, possibly a vein of iron that darkens when it comes in contact with oxygen.
Lame.
So lame. So though it may have been proven false, the town still celebrates with the annual Jonathan Buck's Race to the Grave coffin race.
Oh, that's fantastic.
The Jonathan race seems to take place in October. So the point is you build a coffin and ride it down Main Street. Each coffin must be built within certain specifications. All must be
pushed.
Like
boxcar racing.
Yeah.
Love that.
All must be pushed by a 4-person team and all must have a Jonathan riding in the coffin.
That's beautiful.
The coffin with the fastest overall recorded time is the winner. The winner receives a check of $500 written to the charity or nonprofit of the winning team's choice.
Damn.
What? That's such a nice thing.
I want the $500.
You're doing this for charity, Mackenzie.
Okay.
I thought you'd be like, oh, that's so nice.
It is. But I can promise you that those that have won were a little disappointed that they could not keep the $500.
But as you're competing, you know you're not giving it to yourself.
Still. I'm just saying.
But that one is kind of cool. Obviously, the picture of the tombstone with the foot leg thing will be in our posts for the episode.
This is why you're doing it now.
I know. All right. So to end the urban legends of Maine, I have one last one.
Okay.
This is the Maiden's Cliff. Oh, God. Okay. Mount Miguntacook is a popular mountain in Camden, Maine. It offers a network of trails that offer many hiking opportunities. While on the trails and even at the summit, you can take in a stunning view of Camden Harbor. But at the main part of the cliff system, on top of the highest cliff, sits a huge cross. At the base is a polished granite stone with the inscription, quote, Eleanor French, on May 7th, 1864, this 12-year-old farmer's daughter fell to her death from this cliff.
Oh, no.
According to legend, she was here as a member of a Maying party and fell
As a what party?
And fell trying to catch her windblown hat. This cross was erected in her memory. I believe a Maying party as someone who goes out to pick Mayflowers.
Oh.
So very wholesome.
Okay.
So long ago, the area known as the Lincolnville Beach was owned by the French family, so it was originally French speech.
Mm-hmm.
Eleonora was the youngest daughter of Zadok French, and in 1864, Eleonora was 12 years old. On May 6th, Eleonora, a few of her siblings, their teacher, and young male friend all headed up to the top of what is now Mount Miguntacook to have a picnic and go Maying, which, again, I think is picking Mayflowers. Legend goes that as they were at the top, a strong gust of wind came through and blew Eleanor's bonnet straight off her head. She went to grab...
bonnet. Not her bonnet.
Not her bonnet. She went to grab for her bonnet without realizing how close to the cliff's edge she was. She took a step too far and fell down 300 feet to the bottom of the cliff.
Ooh.
Her sister would say that she did grab it and sat on the edge of the cliff to put her bonnet back on when another strong gust of wind came. This is the one that pushed her off. Surprisingly, she survived.
Her sister pushed her.
Her sister did not push her.
Mm.
But it took rescuers hours to finally reach her. And when they did, they looked her over and she looked fine. No visible injuries and no obvious broken bones.
She was alive?
Mm-hmm.
What?
But they hadn't been able to see the extensive internal damage that Eleonora had suffered.
Sure.
Sadly, she passed away in the middle of the night.
Oh.
Her story obviously spread around the town. This is how it reached Joseph B. Stearns. Stearns was so touched by Eleanor's story, as he had a young daughter, that he paid for a cross to be erected on the cliff. But due to bad weather and bad people, the cross had to be replaced several times. The community replaces it each time because they say the monument is as much part of the community as Eleanor's story is. The cross that had been put up in 1947 was blown down on January 17, 1980. It was replaced with a new cross that weighed 600 pounds and measured 12 feet by 24 feet.
Damn.
Helicopters of the Air National Guard installed the fourth placement. Then, on September 15, 1986, Roy Brown and Sam Dreyer went together, climbing the trail, and installed a monument donated by Crystal Monuments and Late Funeral Home. It was inscribed with the words, "In memory of Eleanor French." The monument was installed at the base of the cross drilled into the rock. Then, in May of 1988, awful vandals toppled the cross and destroyed all of the hard work that the two men had done. So the Camden Fire Department rescue team and Camden Park and Recreation Department volunteers worked to put the cross right again. 2 helicopters from the 240th Engineer Group of the Maine National Guard also helped, this time securing it with cables that had been donated by the Wayfarer Marine Corporation. I included all these people to show you how much this community came together to get this cross up.
Yeah.
Then one of the cross's arms broke off, so on Memorial Day of 1992...
Okay, you know what? I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to need you to stop. At what point do you say to yourself, maybe we shouldn't have this up?
This one.
Okay.
This one. So on Memorial Day of 1992, a steel cross was erected and reinforced with epoxy paint to make it stronger. This one was also secured by cables, and this is the cross that still stands today. So this one is 33 years old, and it is still standing.
For now.
Shh.
I bet you it's gotten struck by lightning a few times.
Well, maybe with it being covered by paint.
It's still metal.
I know, but I don't know.
And it's tall.
I know. Like right there on a cliff.
Right.
It is said that on balmy late spring days, the apparition of a young girl in Victorian period clothing can be seen. Usually she's either picking wildflowers or gazing out towards Lake Megunticook. But others have experienced...
I haven't begun to cook yet.
No, what's funny when you say it is you look off in the distance and you laugh to yourself.
No, I don't have the person laugh with me.
Oh, okay. But others have experienced her chasing after a hat before falling off the cliff, hearing her screams carried on the wind. Those who have experienced Eleonora say that her presence isn't scary or threatening, and usually those who see her have left the area with a sense of peace. Others have experienced an overwhelming feeling of grief and sadness. It is said, though, that it is bad luck to pick any of Eleonora's wildflowers. So while these were short, these are just a few of Maine's urban legends.
Go pick her flowers. See what happens.
Don't pick her flowers. It's bad luck. Let
who?
Eleanor have her flowers. For the person who picks them.
A cross is going to fall on them?
Ooh, maybe. I don't know.
One of the little cross parts is going to be like, bam!
One of the arms.
Yeah.
Just bop you off the cliff.
Yep.
But yeah, so those are some Maine urban legends.
Wow. I wonder if they're main attractions.
You can leave the doors right there.
Ooh, these are going to be legendary.
I need a new co-host. If anyone wants to be, please reach out. Let me know.
A job well done.
I'm stopping this. Mackenzie.
Yes, ma'am.
What tale do you have for us tonight?
Perspective is a powerful thing. Our experiences shape how we see the world, influencing the way we interpret events, people, and even truth itself. In storytelling, perspective plays an equally crucial role. What we know depends entirely on who is telling the story. As the saying goes, there are 3 sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth. Throughout my investigation into this case, I encountered multiple perspectives, each offering a different version of events. This story serves as an important reminder to examine all the facts before forming a judgment. I've done my best to present every side and allow you to reach your own conclusions about the case of Pearl Bruns.
Okay. I love how you said during my investigation.
Well, yeah. I
like it.
investigated.
Yes, you did.
Research, investigate, they're synonyms.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing. I just liked it. I liked the term you used.
Good.
It was a compliment, Mackenzie.
I never know. I never know if it's a sarcastic comment.
No, it was a real comment. I liked it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill and Pearl Bruns had a rocky relationship from the very beginning. Pearl was on her 6th, maybe even 7th marriage, while Bill was on his 4th.
Oh my gosh.
Both had older children from previous relationships and spent much of their time drinking and arguing, usually about money. Pearl, 48, worked at a fish packing plant in Portland, Maine. Bill ran a refrigerated truck business delivering fish and other goods. After about 5 years of marriage, things took a dark turn in the late summer of 1991. On August 11th, 1991, Elaine Woodward and her 5-year-old daughter Tiffany spent the day with Pearl at her home. Elaine was close with her mom, and Pearl was an active, loving presence in her granddaughter's life. Before they left that day, Pearl handed Elaine some money so she could take Tiffany to Funtown. Elaine described her mother as, quote, the type of person who would give you the shirt off their back. A few days later, Elaine grew concerned when she hadn't heard from her. On Tuesday, August 17th, she reported her mother missing with the South Portland police. The following day, Pearl's husband, Bill, also contacted police. He told them that after Elaine and Tiffany left that Sunday, he and Pearl got into an argument. She asked him for some money, he refused, and things escalated. Bill claimed he left to check his trucks, and when he returned, Pearl was gone. According to Bill, he came home to find a half-packed suitcase on the bed and noticed that Pearl's purse, along with her keys and credit cards, were missing. When asked why he waited so long to report her missing, Bill said it wasn't unusual for Pearl to leave for a couple days before returning home. He had assumed she'd be back. On August 21st, Pearl Bruns was officially classified as a missing person, and her photo was shared by the media. So this is where perspective starts to play a major role in this case.
Ooh, okay.
So we're going to start with Pearl's daughter, Elaine, and a local reporter who followed the case very closely, like from the beginning.
And how old is Elaine?
I don't know. It never said.
Oh, okay.
But Pearl's only 48.
Right. I was trying to think of the math.
So I'm thinking at most in her 20s.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Christine Young was a staff writer for the Sun Journal and published an article on September 27th, 1992, about a year after Pearl disappeared. In it, she detailed her experience with the investigation and her interactions with the police. According to Young, she was first contacted on the morning of August 21st, 1991, by South Portland Police Chief Robert Schwartz. He asked for media coverage of the missing person report, hoping that broadcasting Pearl's picture would help locate her. Schwartz recounted the facts of the case, most of which we've already covered, and told Young, quote, it appears she just dropped off the earth. We can't find any traces of her. No one has seen her, heard from her, talked to her, and as a result, we feel that we'd like to ask for the assistance of the public. He described Pearl as being 4'11" and 125 pounds. Teeny tiny.
Yeah.
Last seen wearing white tennis shoes with pink laces. But it's what happened after the official interview that stuck with Christine Young. She wrote that she had asked Chief Schwartz what he personally believed had happened with Pearl. Here's how she described it. Quote, leaning back in his chair, Schwartz said, she does this. She's an alcoholic. She often goes to her sister's house in Old Orchard Beach. He noted that Bill Bruns was Pearl's 6th or 7th husband and seemed to think she was a bit of a character. Schwartz theorized she might have run off with an ex-husband. When Young asked about the possibility of foul play, specifically involving Bill, Schwartz dismissed the idea. Nah, he said with a wave of his arm, I've known him for years. When she asked if he intended to investigate Bill Bruns, Schwartz replied, quote, there's nothing to investigate. We don't have a body or anything. Right now, it's just a missing person. And then with a shrug and a chuckle, he added, quote, it was the perfect crime.
I don't like this.
Young's cameraman, Steve Jobs. Nope. Young's cameraman, Steve Jacobs.
Everyone had to get their start somewhere.
Confirmed this exchange. He was present filming for the newsreel. So what Schwartz had said, that part was not on camera.
Oh,
but
okay.
The guy who was like doing the recording with the reporter, he was also there. And so he like corroborated.
Good job. Yeah.
Thank you. That was really good.
That was really good.
Expect that to come out like that. Don't ask me to do it again. That was so impressive. On December 27th, Young followed up with the South Portland Police and was connected with Detective Reed Barker, who was working the case alongside his wife, Detective Linda Barker.
Oh, that's kind of cute.
Right? That's what I thought. Young told Reed there had been no real progress. They were still chasing leads. Young described him as friendly and cooperative. He even provided her with the names of Pearl's relatives so she could try contacting them for more information. So we're going to continue following Christine Young's perspective for the moment as she began conducting interviews with Pearl's family, starting with Pearl's daughter Elaine Woodward and then Pearl's niece Betty Blow.
Wow.
Cannot make up these names.
No.
Elaine appeared on camera and said that she was certain something terrible had happened to her mother. At that point, Pearl had been missing for about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, it's very seldom she goes even a day, 2 days without seeing Tiffany, she said, referring to Pearl's granddaughter. Elaine also noted that her mother's prized blue Cadillac was still in the Bruns' garage, something Pearl would never have left behind.
Right.
I think her license plate said, like, Pearl B or something like that.
Oh.
Yeah. Elaine admitted on camera that Bill Bruns hadn't once called to ask if she'd seen her mother. Then the camera stopped rolling, and Elaine shared even more off the record. She told Young that 5 days after reporting her mother missing, she had gone to the Bruns' house with Detective Linda Barker. There, they discovered blood in several parts of the house, including a trail that led down to the cellar.
Ooh.
Elaine said that her mother was terrified of the cellar and would never willingly go down there.
Yeah.
She asked investigators to test the blood and compare it to her mother's blood type, A negative. Elaine also mentioned that she and the detective found blood smeared on the outside of the half-packed suitcase left on the bed.
And what year are we? Sorry.
91.
91. Okay.
When Young, I thought the same thing. They would have some DNA would be a thing, but it'd be slow.
Okay.
Because it was still new.
And it was the type where, like, you couldn't really match to a person, but you could, like, find out what the type was or say that it had, like, these characteristics.
By 91, you would definitely be able to match it to a person.
Okay.
But you probably had to have, like, bigger samples.
Mm-hmm.
I think with what they had, they could have if they were able to get, like, something of Pearl's
right
to match to the blood.
Okay.
Yes, they could also do the blood type too.
Typing, yeah.
But also just like to confirm that it is blood.
Yeah.
And all that.
Okay.
What I feel like is that DNA testing at this point was like either at the state level or like FBI level.
Okay.
So if it was something you were going to do, it probably would have like taken a minute.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha.
So when Young asked Elaine to repeat this information on camera, she refused. She said police had instructed her to share very little with the media so they could have a fair chance of finding her mother.
I mean, that's valid.
Next, Young interviewed Pearl's niece, Betty Blow. She said she spoke to Pearl the morning of the day she disappeared. Pearl was in good spirits and they had made plans to meet the following Wednesday. So I'm pretty sure. So, like, the last time Pearl was seen was on Sunday.
Okay.
Her daughter had left after visiting with her. Her and her husband got in the argument about money. He leaves. And when he came back, she was not there.
Came back on Sunday.
On Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah. Her daughter reported her missing like 2 days later.
Right. And then they came back to the house 5 days later.
Yeah.
So 3 days after the 2 days.
No, 5 days after the Sunday that she went missing.
Yeah. So 3 days after the 2 days.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
White is black, but white.
And I keep saying that to each other every time we're like talking about something. I'm like, black is white and white is black. Pearl was in good spirits and they had made plans to meet the following Wednesday. A few days later, Bill Bruns showed up at Betty's house asking if Pearl had come by or borrowed any money after she left on Sunday. He also told her he had received an anonymous phone call that said, quote, too bad about your wife. She's at the bottom of the ocean.
Oh.
Betty received her own anonymous call. The voice on the other end said, quote, Pearl Burns is in a funeral home in Brunswick. So she said she called every funeral home in the area, but not one had any idea what she was talking about.
Oh my gosh.
Through tears, Betty told Young, quote, I'm frightened, I'm scared. After speaking with Betty Blow, reporter Christine Young and Pearl's daughter Elaine Woodward went straight to the South Portland Police Department to meet with Chief Robert Schwartz. Young told the chief on camera that Elaine believed something bad had happened to her mother and that this is more than just a missing persons case. Schwartz responded, quote, we have to have a body or some indication there's a crime. The mere fact that someone is missing does not mean there is any foul play. Young pushed back. Quote, what about the blood that was found on the suitcase and on the bulkhead? Isn't that an indication that a crime may have been committed? Schwartz doubled down. Quote, we don't know that it was blood. It could have been rust. Young pressed further, telling him, quote, my understanding is that your own detective, Linda Barker, told Elaine it was blood. Schwartz acknowledged that preliminary tests suggested it could be blood, but claimed that only the FBI could conduct definitive testing.
Okay, so let's just not do anything.
However, he added that the FBI wouldn't get involved unless a crime had definitely been committed.
Okay, so we can't tell if it's a crime or not because we don't know if this is blood. The only person who can tell it's blood is the FBI, but we can't involve the FBI because no crime has been committed.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's stupid. Bureaucracy at its best.
Remember, it's important to have all the facts.
Okay, sorry, go on.
Yes. By the first week of October, Elaine had had enough. She had decided it was time to speak out publicly. She went on camera and shared everything she knew about her mother's disappearance. So everything she had said off camera, she came back, said it on camera.
Okay, and who's this Elaine? Okay.
At that point, Pearl had been missing for nearly 2 months.
Oh my God.
She'd missed her granddaughter's first day of school and hadn't reached out after Hurricane Bob hit the area. That just wasn't like her. Elaine wasn't alone. She brought other family members with her, and all of them insisted, on camera, that something terrible had happened to Pearl. Elaine told reporters that if the South Portland police couldn't or wouldn't take action, then the Maine State Police should step in. That same week, Elaine called the Attorney General's office. They told her to put her concerns in writing and submit a formal letter requesting help. Meanwhile, Christine Young reached out to her father, a retired FBI agent, and asked about the blood testing. He told her that Schwartz was wrong. The FBI did not require proof of a crime before running forensic tests. In fact, they could get involved at any time if local law enforcement simply asked. Young then contacted Agent David Bell, an FBI agent based in Augusta, Maine. She shared everything she knew about Pearl Bruns' disappearance. Bill agreed. Something about the whole situation didn't sit right. He encouraged her to contact the Attorney General's office. So she did. Young reached out to Assistant Attorney General William Stokes, someone she had worked with in the past. She told him everything: Pearl's disappearance, the blood evidence, the apparent lack of urgency from the local police. After hearing that it was still being treated as a simple missing persons case, Stokes said, quote, "That's crazy." Then he directed her to Deputy AG Fern LaRochelle, head of the criminal division. Young passed along all the information to LaRochelle and let him know that there was a letter from Elaine Woodward waiting to be reviewed. Finally, on October 11th, 1991, 2 months after Pearl had been was last seen, the Maine police officially took over the investigation. So, we've heard this side of the story so far. What are your thoughts?
Ooh, okay. I think it's stupid how the one guy was saying they won't really do anything because no crime has been committed, and that the other guy who said, oh, it's definitely not the husband.
Same guy.
Okay. So that just confirms I don't like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think 2 months missing and not doing anything is kind of ridiculous.
Okay. I agree. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So, okay, the first part that I told you, like the background information right up until like she's reported missing, and then this next part, which talks about like just like the rest of the investigation when the state police took over, is what happened.
Okay.
The part that we're looking at in terms of perspective is the public's perspective of this case.
Oh, okay.
And so right now, looks like local police dropping the ball.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Right.
So now we're going to go into just like essentially the rest of the investigation and like what resulted of that. And then we're going to come back and kind of see the police's side of this investigation.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay. On September 28th, 1991, a hiker found Pearl's missing. So that September was before the state police had taken over.
Okay.
A hiker found Pearl's missing purse in some woods in New Hampshire. The New Hampshire State Police turned it over to the police in Maine. The New Hampshire police said that the bag couldn't have been there for very long because it was in pretty good condition. The contents of the purse included money, diamonds in a cloth bag, and Pearl Bruns credit cards.
Random, but okay.
And also, like, not something that you would be without if you decided to just peace out.
Correct.
When Pearl Bruns was reported missing on August 13th, 1991, initial searches of her residence revealed concerning signs. Investigators discovered blood spatter on the partially packed suitcase in her room, indicating possible foul play. Despite these findings, there was insufficient evidence to determine her whereabouts or the events leading to her disappearance. As suspicions grew, investigators... Now, this is when the state police did this, like the rest of it.
Okay.
As suspicions grew, investigators employed luminol, a chemical agent that reacts with iron and hemoglobin to produce a blue glow, revealing traces of blood invisible to the naked eye. This application uncovered extensive blood evidence throughout the house.
Oh.
So when the daughter and the detective had gone, it was mostly like splatter in various places.
But like very little, right?
Little, but also like from the way it was described, it was like, yes, there was some, and some of it could be explained like as a possibility. But then it also seemed like while it was splatter, there was still a lot. And like,
Oh.
why was there some randomly leading to the cellar?
Oh, okay. So how you had made it sound was like it was just like a little drop here, here, and here.
Oh no, sorry. Like
Oh.
it was just like in random pockets. Like it was on
Oh.
the suitcase.
Yeah.
I think they found some like on the maybe like a
So
couple
how
of
was that not enough for the cop to be like, oh, we should investigate this? Ugh.
yeah. And then there was the stuff like leading down to the cellar.
Like that's not rust.
Right.
What are you holding? Like a rusty shovel on top of the carpet to let it drip? No.
Right. So in the living room, luminol revealed a blood-soaked carpet and cast-off patterns on the walls,
Oh.
suggesting a significant injury occurred in this area.
Oh my
Which
God.
the detectives didn't see at the time because they didn't have luminol.
Right.
The path to the basement, a bloody trail of footprints led from the living room to the basement stairs, indicating movement of the victim or perpetrator after the injury.
Oh my God, that's so creepy.
And then the basement floor, or like the cellar. The luminol highlighted a body-sized blood pattern on the basement floor, implying that Pearl's body had been placed or remained there for some time.
So whoever had killed her, which I'm at this moment thinking the husband,
Okay.
obviously, but whoever had done it took some effort to clean up afterwards.
Yes.
Because if there's only like bits left, like that's still you didn't clean up well. But if the luminol is detecting that much, like you cleaned up well.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. To locate Pearl's body, cadaver dogs trained to detect the scent of human decomposition were brought into the residence. The dogs exhibited interest in specific areas of the basement, particularly the soil floor, suggesting the possible presence of human remains beneath.
It's a soil floor?
Yeah.
Ew. That's
So-
like serial killer home.
Yeah. So the dog where he indicated that the body was, they dig. It wasn't there.
Uh-huh.
Then they do end up finding it through other technology, which I'll go over in a second.
In there.
And yeah, in the basement. But the reason I'm saying it is because one of the like people talking about it thought that the reason why the dog missed by like mere feet of where she was is because she ends up being like wrapped in plastic. So
the dog did a good job.
he still did a good job. He's a good boy.
One TV show I absolutely love is Contraband. In one of them, some dude was running, or no, maybe it was caught on camera. I don't know. It was some show.
Yeah.
And the bad guy's like running and they release the dog and the dog goes and like takes him down. And they're like, you're such a good dog.
You did your job.
It's like, you did your job. You were such a good dog. Look at you.
Given the limitations of visual inspections in cadaver dogs, investigators turned to ground-penetrating radar technology to non-invasively examine the basement's subsurface. GPR uses electromagnetic waves to detect anomalies underground. In this case, GPR indicated a disturbance in the soil consistent with a burial site.
Ugh.
Based on the GPR findings, authorities excavated the identified area in the basement on September 11th, 1992, approximately 13 months after Pearl's disappearance. So at this point, she's been gone for a year.
Wow.
They uncovered a body wrapped in garbage bags. The victim was identified as Pearl Bruns, confirmed by personal items such as a monogrammed watch and the clothing she was last seen wearing.
Is her last name Burns or Bruns?
Shit, Bruns.
Okay.
Do I say Burns sometimes?
Sometimes.
I knew that was going to happen. Because it's Bruns. And I'm like, you're going to say Burns so many times.
So just know, Burns is Bruns.
Yeah, my apologies. The autopsy revealed that Pearl had suffered 3 blunt force injuries to the left side of her face, consistent with being struck by a fist.
Oh.
These injuries led to significant blood loss, ultimately causing her death.
The fists? Like just punches? Oh my gosh.
Additionally, it was discovered that Pearl had been diagnosed with terminal cancer with an estimated 6 months to live at the time of her death.
That's sad.
Yeah. These methods not only led to the discovery of her body, but also provided critical evidence that resulted in William Bill Bruns pleading guilty to manslaughter and receiving a 15-year prison sentence.
Yeah, the person who definitely didn't do it. The person who's like a really good guy.
Yeah. They had like the newspaper's report said that like once they found her body, they went back upstairs and he was just so like he wasn't concerned, wasn't fazed. About to sit down, had a bowl of spaghetti in front of him, and literally says like, "Oh, well, can I finish my spaghetti first?"
Oh,
And the police are like, "No,
that's not how this works."
right? Like, no, you're arrested for your wife's murder."
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, just finish your spaghetti. We'll sit here while you eat it.
yeah, like the fuck. So yeah, gets manslaughter though, which I'll explain in a second because if it happened the way that maybe some people believe, then I get where manslaughter came from. Because One report I saw, it's possible what happened, they got in the fight, he hit her, still left, but when he left, she was alive.
Then he came back.
She had bled to death.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that how she died is like by being punched in the face caused such significant bleeding that she bled to death.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Manslaughter makes sense.
Yeah.
In that, like, context.
Yeah. But it'll still piss you off later.
I'm sure it will.
How much time he actually spent.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm ready.
But hold on to that because it's coming later. We got to
Okay.
do the other half of the story. So if you were to only read the 1992 article, you might walk away thinking that the South Portland police had completely washed their hands of this case, that they put little effort to uncover the truth about what happened to Pearl Bruns. But that's only one side of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Now we hear from Detective Linda Barker, the lead investigator on the case from the very beginning. In April of 1999, the Portland Press-Herald published an article detailing new developments in the case, including the fact that it would soon be featured on national television. Investigative Reports, a program on A&E, had decided to cover the story and interview several key players, including Barker. She told producers, quote, "We shoveled in the basement and dug within a foot of where Pearl was actually found." So when she was investigating, they did try to dig up the basement.
Right.
To see if they could find her.
Right.
And wherever they dug, they couldn't find her. Barker had been on the force since 1981, and she said a gut feeling told her this was more than just another missing persons case. Quote, "I just felt from the very beginning that there was something very wrong," she said. 5 days after Pearl was reported missing, Barker arrived at the Bruns' house to walk the property with Pearl's daughter, Elaine Woodward. She arrived about 15 minutes early and decided to take a quick look around the backyard. Quote, "I went out back and looked around the woods to see if Bruns was buried there, for no other reason than just because," she later said. When Barker finally had the chance to go inside the home, she immediately found clues that raised red flags. She contacted her supervisors, and together they began to search the cellar, focusing on an area where the dirt looked like it had been disturbed. But unfortunately, they found nothing. Quote, "We had no reason at that time to believe she was actually buried in the basement," Barker explained. There were, at the time, plausible explanations for some of the physical evidence. For example, Pearl was known as a heavy bleeder, and her daughter had told police that Pearl had cut her finger the day she disappeared. In other reports, Elaine mentioned that her mother suffered from frequent nosebleeds, something that might explain the blood found in the bedroom, particularly on Pearl's pillowcase.
That's interesting.
And then there was Pearl's history of occasionally staying with friends or family for a few days at a time. Still, Barker said, quote, "We had to prove where she wasn't. Then that she wasn't just missing."
Mm-hmm.
She and her husband, Detective Reed Barker, worked almost nonstop. They took Pearl's photo to bars around Cumberland County and followed up on leads at airports, bus stations, and taxi companies. Even after the state police officially took over the case in October, Detective Barker continued to assist the investigation. State Police Lieutenant Michael Harriman, who was also interviewed by Investigative Reports, had nothing but praise for Barker's work. Quote, "Linda Barker had done an outstanding job to make a preliminary determination about what could have happened and what could have not happened," he said. Barker welcomed the help. The state had access to more advanced forensic technology and resources, tools that could make a real difference. She told the producers she firmly believed Bill Bruns was guilty and that she was grateful the police work in this case would finally be recognized on a national platform. Quote, "We did work hard," she said. "We did finally get our man, and we did find Pearl." Obviously, Chief Schwartz was none too pleased about the bad rap that his department was catching heat over the handling of this case.
Well, he's not the husband. He's a good guy.
Right. So,
the blood? That's rust.
So you hear Linda's side and what she did in this investigation. So this was back, this next part and, what he says was back in, 91, 92 when, the case was, wrapping up and stuff.
Okay.
He told the Sun Journal, quote, "We're being unjustly accused by a woman who thinks we didn't do a job. Whether that's the reporter or the daughter, I don't know. Maybe it's both."
Mm-hmm.
He added that this department worked hard at trying to find out what happened to Bruns. He also pointed out that it took several searches with dogs and specialized equipment before the state police located the body. Schwartz said, quote, "One would have you believe the body was lying on top of the ground and no one touched it, but it was not that easy." In 1991, Chief Schwartz had told the Press-Herald that he remained unconvinced a crime had occurred. He said his department would handle the case the same way if it had to do it over. Schwartz also claimed that the blood that was found was only a couple of drops. He said, quote, "There was no copious amounts of blood that anyone would suspect was any more than cutting your finger or a bloody nose. It wasn't a puddle of blood. If you listen to people, you'd think that it was, but absolutely not." Schwartz also commended the work done by Detective Linda Barker. He said, quote, Linda Barker worked hard on this case from day one and was not able to get credit because we were not able to find the body. He also noted that when the department was in charge of the case, they were still getting reports that people had cited Pearl Bruns alive. He said, quote, I feel that we have definitely checked out every lead, every sighting. We had the pocketbook sent to us by the chief of police in New Hampshire. We did everything possible.
But, like, my thought is...
Wait, hold on.
Okay.
One more part and then you can tell me. The Maine State Police said the discovery of the blood in the home of a missing person is a reason for heightened suspicion. State Police Captain Charles Love told the press, quote, they'll have to answer to that. Some of these things were explained like the mother was a bleeder. You may or may not buy into that. I don't want to second guess South Portland, but it certainly raises concerns. I can't say why they didn't do more. I wish they did. Any change in opinion?
I was literally just going to say, if there's any blood in the home, you should look into it.
Yes.
Like, yeah, regardless of if it's like a nosebleed or she bleeds a lot when she cut her finger. Regardless, there's blood in the home, look into it.
Yes.
Blood in the home of someone who's missing.
Yeah.
If there's blood in the home and you can account for every person who lives in the house, cool,
right.
There's blood in the home.
Yeah.
They got a nosebleed. One person's missing and there's blood in the home.
Confirm it.
What are you doing not looking into it?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think I had read the article from the perspective of the reporter.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, damn, like, police did nothing. Like, wow, that's so fucked up. Like, police chief is hiding something. Then I read the 1991 article where they interviewed, like, the state police and the detective. And I was like, you guys did do stuff. I'm sorry.
I still don't think enough stuff.
I personally think, not that anyone said this anywhere, but I personally think that it was railroaded by the chief. And her daughter in a later article even said, like, it's not the police department in the whole that I have an issue with. It's the chief.
The one guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That, like,
I can see that. Okay.
He put up the roadblocks.
Right.
And things like that for things to progress. But
right.
The actual detectives working the case did put in that effort.
I like that. Yes. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I just know that, like, what it made me think about was how people make those snap judgments that police aren't doing anything when there are times where police can't tell you what they're doing.
Right.
And so part of it felt a little like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there was definitely things that I was like, that's suspicious. Like, that's weird that you didn't look into that more.
100%.
And things like that. So it definitely, like, I don't think everything was done correctly.
No.
But I don't think everyone's to blame.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree.
Yeah.
Though it seems like everyone else did their job.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
he didn't.
Yeah. So, in conclusion, according to reports, Bill Bruns died in 2002 in Kennebunk, Maine. Living
After serving how much time in prison?
Okay,
sorry.
Living a total of 90 years. He only served 8 years and got out in 2002 and lived in Cody, Wyoming, and then later moved back to Maine.
Nice. Okay, so he had a nice long life. Didn't spend much of it in jail.
No, it gets even better. You ready?
Oh, good. Of course. Yes. Listen, let's hit me.
Bill's and Pearl's car ended up with Bill's son, and the house was sold to pay for Bill's lawyer.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Understanding all perspectives in a situation is essential for gaining a complete and accurate picture of what's really going on.
I feel, let's go back just a moment.
Okay.
I feel that should not be allowed.
That
you own a house with your wife.
Yeah.
You are suspected of killing your wife.
Yeah.
You are then arrested for the murder of your wife.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to use your combined property to pay for that.
I agree.
That's kind of fucked up.
I agree. Every person brings their own experiences, values, and interpretations which can shed light on aspects others might miss. Listening to different viewpoints encourages empathy, reduces misunderstandings, and helps prevent bias or snap judgments. It also fosters better decision-making and problem-solving by considering multiple angles. In any setting, whether personal, professional, or societal, valuing all voices promotes fairness, inclusivity, and stronger relationships built on trust and mutual respect. And that is the more intense case of Pearl Bruns than I thought it was going to be.
Don't you love that?
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is just cool Forensic Files episode. We'll dive into the whole, like, when they found her, what they were thinking. And then I started reading these newspaper articles and I was like, well, goddamn.
I liked how you did it in the different perspectives.
Thank you.
That was very interesting.
One thing I always try to think about even when I watch documentaries, when I listen to true crime cases, all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever they say that the person maintains their innocence, obviously we know that everyone in jail is saying they're innocent.
Right.
And how many people actually are?
Who's to say?
Who's to say? But also knowing that there are a good amount of wrongful convictions.
Right.
For just a minute. Even for like the really bad ones where they have plenty of evidence that says, no, you definitely did it. For like 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, what if?
But did they?
But did they?
Yeah.
And I always think about the perspective we're getting. It's typically law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Typically the victims, which is the ones that should be.
No, absolutely.
But I also, you see those cases all the time where someone is suspected of doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And the police suspect it, the public suspects it, so therefore the victims' families suspect it too.
Right.
And then they're wrong.
Right.
And
it doesn't happen often, but it does.
Right. And if you just have that one side being like, this is what we found, this is why, this is why, this is why, this is why, without having all the facts, whether it's scientific facts or just a different perspective, would you make those snap judgments?
Right.
And I don't know. It's just always interesting to me. Obviously, like I find these stories interesting or else we wouldn't cover them. We wouldn't listen to the podcasts we do or watch the documentaries and things like that. But it is just something that always crosses my mind.
But in this case, it was the person who we thought it was going to be.
Oh, yeah. He was definitely it from the jump. There was no fucking question.
Right.
It was just, was it handled the best way it could have been handled? Like, did police do everything in their power that they could do? Or did they drop the ball and later on try to be like, no, we did this,
we did what we were supposed to do.
We did whatever.
Yeah.
It depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
So I would like to think it's a little bit of both.
Probably.
Typically it is.
Probably.
In some form or fashion.
Yeah.
So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, nice work, Talon.
Thank you.
And if you like this podcast, rate and review us everywhere that you get your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And let us know you did so, and we'll send you a sticker.
Tell all your friends about us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you have any experiences, any at all, you ran into a creepy man at the grocery store, you think you saw a ghost, anything.
You were on a jury for a really crazy case.
Yeah. Let us know at ascarystatepodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, man.
And I think that's all we have. So stay scary.
Stay safe.